夢の国を探す君の名を誰もが心に刻むまで悲しみ乗り越えた微笑みに君を信じていいですか
Hello and welcome back. Thanks for joining. My name is Berit and today we have part 5 of the Hoshin Engi series, in which we will talk about the last stage of the plot. We will unravel the whole thing today and finally learn the true nature of the Hoshin project and much more. I hope that you have a drink with you, maybe, because this video will be so long. And maybe you should also have some tissues nearby because you might need them. So obviously this video contains spoilers for the rest of the series. We will specifically be talking about the middle of volume 17 until the end of volume 23. So yeah, where did we leave it last time? Right, the Senin World War has ended. Both Kongrong Mountains and Kingo Islands have perished and are destroyed. 10 of the 12 elite Senin are dead, and so are also Bunshu and Hiko. How could I forget that? So, in this part we have 3 main strands that I will try to use to organize what's happening, because it's a lot and I have 8 pages of script, so again this will be long. Yeah, we have 3 strands. First of all, we have the Taikobo plot line, then we have the Ducky plot line, and we have the Yoka plot line, which I will come to in just a bit. We'll start with the Taikobo stuff. First of all, we go back into the human world, where King Bu is preparing his army to march to Choka and defeat King Chu. The Sendo, who are on his side, kind of, they are affected by the World War in different ways. Tenka, for example, is a bit withdrawn at times, which is A, foreshadowing, and B, because his father died recently. And Lady Ryukitsu Koshu, for example, she suffers quite a bit because she is a pure-blood Senin, so the air on Earth is poison to her. Yeah. Taikobo decides to leave again to look for the third of the 3 great Senin, Taijo Rokun, to hopefully persuade him to help them in their fight against Ducky. We have already met the other 2 great Senin, Genshi Tenson, the chief of Kongrong Mountains, and Tsuten Kyoshu, I think, who was the chief of Kingo Island and Yozen's father, but he's dead now. He died in the World War. Yozen is now in charge to train the others while Taikobo is away and to prepare them for the big battle that is to come. On their search for Taijo Rokun, Taikobo and Suppo get some unexpected help from Shinkoyo, and eventually they find a strange place in the clouds which is called Togenkyo, however you actually pronounce that. At that place, a guide who looks suspiciously like Taikobo shows them the way to their village elder, but the village elder and basically nobody in this place know who Taijo Rokun is or where to find him. So Taikobo will need some time to, well, yeah, find out where he is. But here's the catch. In order to be allowed to live in Togenkyo for a while, Taikobo also has to earn his keep, so eventually he starts shearing sheep, which is something that the Jiang tribe, where he originally comes from, also has done. So 3 months later, Taikobo has gotten, well, buff. What a little sunshine and hard work can do to a manga hero, am I right? Funnily enough, Taikobo also has kind of forgotten his actual mission because life in Togenkyo is good and chill. So anyway, the village's Chief Justice Yukio reminds Taikobo that he was actually kind of looking for this guy, Taijiro-kun, and she takes Taikobo to her foster father, Lao Tzu, who has always been kind of a little strange. And when they arrive, Lao Tzu is actually sleeping in a lazy suit because he's the laziest man in the world. And in that lazy suit where he's sleeping, he cannot be woken up by someone else, and the suit even does the breathing for him because Lao Tzu is too lazy to breathe, basically. But when he is in an REM sleep phase, it's possible to talk to a 3D image of him, which is what Yukio does when they arrive. But the conversation between Taikobo and Taijiro-kun is not exactly the most productive one, because Taijiro-kun refuses to help them to fight Ducky. He tells him to kind of go with the flow and that everything in the world has its own rhythm, and then he goes back to sleep. So the conversation actually ends with Taikobo also falling asleep, and then in the dream he keeps on talking with Taijiro-kun, and eventually Taijiro-kun gives Taikobo his super P.P.S, which actually looks like another upgrade to Taikobo's Dashinban. And Taikobo also trains with the super P.P.S in this dream world, because he has to learn how to use it, because the super P.P.S absorbs a lot more power from your body than a regular P.P.S would. So yeah, Taikobo trains in his sleep or in his dreams, and he ends up dreaming for a whole 9 months before Taijiro-kun kind of throws him out of the dream because Taikobo is disturbing Taijiro-kun's sleep and he cannot take it anymore. So while Taikobo was away sharing sheep, getting buff and dream training, the army of King Bu has reached Menchi Castle, which is the last fortress before Choka. This fortress is held by Chokei, who was a mentee of Bunshu, and since Bunshu is dead, it's safe to say that Chokei is pretty pissed and not exactly a fan of Taikobo and the likes. Chokei and the Sendo eventually start to fight, but Taikobo shows up mid-fight, and now we find out that Taikobo's new P.P.S is actually an anti-P.P.S, so he neutralizes the effect of other P.P.S. Which is how Taikobo can kind of temporarily end the fighting. So Taikobo starts talking to Chokei, and he tries to convince him to let them pass through Menchi Castle, which Chokei doesn't really want to do. So they end up going to the Hoshindai together, where the deceased heroes have gone, or well, where their souls are sealed, and they live in like separate areas, so every soul has their own area where they kind of live. Anyway, Chokei talks to Bunshu, and afterwards he lets the others pass through Menchi Castle, but we never get to know what Chokei and Bunshu actually talk about. So eventually the army of King Bu can pass Menchi Castle without a fight, and now the big battle of the plains between the armies of Yin and Choka is approaching. Everybody is battle ready, especially Tenka, who wants to avenge his father and kill King Chu and Ducky. This is a turning point in history in that world, which means that history's guidepost Yoka is about to appear, and we will talk about her in just a minute. So the army of Yin, which has about 250,000 soldiers, is about to encounter the army of Choka, but surprise, the army of Choka has grown considerably from about 200,000 soldiers to 700,000 soldiers, all bewitched by Ducky and prepared to furiously fight to their deaths. The battle begins, and eventually even King Chu joins the fight. He has, by the way, been modified a little bit by Ducky to turn into a monster. And what she did is that she transferred the power of former kings into King Chu, and especially the power of the first king of the dynasty, King To. And King To was believed to be a god, and the legend goes that, for example, he couldn't be hurt by arrows. They would just not enter his body and not wound him. And the real kicker is that King Chu first appears on the battlefield as a child, so he gets a lot of empathy from the soldiers, and they feel all the more fired up to fight for him. He later transforms into a huge monster and ends up trampling down his own people because he literally doesn't see them on the ground. And when he sees how far he's veered away from his people and from being a good king, he breaks down and turns back into a human. Now it's also time to talk a little bit about history's guidepost, yoga. So, quick history lesson. Several hundreds of thousands of years ago, an undefined flying object, so basically a UFO, came to Earth with several beings on board. They were basically looking for a new home planet because they destroyed their planet. Oops. And Earth happened to be similar to their original planet, so these beings, these first humans, they came to Earth. And the strongest of those beings was Yoka. So in order to make Earth their new home planet, Yoka wanted to pretty much destroy all life on Earth, wipe it clean, and then use the powers of these so-called first humans to build a new planet. But the others kind of objected because they had just made negative experiences with the destruction of their planet, in that they accidentally destroyed their own planet. And they preferred the idea of merging with the planet, with everything, the plants, the animals, the landscape, the air, in order to thin out their blood and lessen their power so they couldn't destroy the new planet. Yoka didn't like that idea, and in order to overrule her resistance, the others had to seal her body because Yoka was just too dang powerful. Afterwards, they merged with the planet like they had planned, and as humans evolved in the course of evolution, some of them had a higher concentration of these first ones' powers in their blood, and those are the Senin, basically. But eventually Yoka managed to separate her soul from her body, and thus she could still destroy civilization because she's just so powerful she doesn't even need a body to do that. So basically, civilization has evolved and declined many times over in Earth's history. And Yoka started to manipulate Earth's history basically so that things would happen according to what Yoka wanted. And what she wanted was to create a perfect copy of her home planet. And when it was time to establish the Yin dynasty, which is the dynasty of King Chu, she gave a lot of powers to the person who would later become the first king, King To. So that's why people believed he was a god, because he had supernatural powers from Yoka. And those powers have now been transferred to King Chu by Ducky. And we also, of course, have to talk about Ducky's involvement in all this Yoka stuff. We already know that Ducky has been around for a while in history, living in the palace and stuff, even before bewitching King Chu. And Ducky sees how Yoka transfers her powers to the guy who will become King To. And at that time, Ducky had already left Kingo Island, but she was on her own and not as strong as she is now. So she and Yoka made a deal. Yoka gave Ducky powers that made her as strong as she is now. And in exchange, Daki agreed to help Yoka find her body and also help her to manipulate history from behind the scenes. But others, like the three great Sennin, they realized something about this plan, so they established the Hoshin project. So the real goal of the Hoshin project is not exactly to defeat Daki and her minions, as we were led to believe for the past 19 volumes, but actually to defeat Yoka before she gets her body back. But the question is, did Yoka also manipulate all of this, like the establishment of the Hoshin project, even the establishment of the Sennin worlds? So Genshi Tenson, he decided to use an innocent and unknowing doshi, Taikobo, for this project, hoping to be able to dupe Yoka and hide his plan from her. So turning back to the battle that is still going on, King Chu is eventually defeated as he realizes how far things have come. But before Tenka can actually deal the final blow, King Chu is taken away from the battlefield by Otenkun. We remember he can take people and put them in other dimensions, and he's being brought back to Choka. Now the thing is, we thought already twice that Otenkun has died, so it's kind of surprising he is still around and hasn't actually died. Tenka of course wants to go to Choka immediately to kill King Chu, but Taikobo tells him that it's important that the humans are the ones who arrive at the capital so that people will recognize King Bu as their new ruler. I don't want to talk about the next part, so I had to get a blanket for support. In the night, Tenka sneaks out of the army camp and rides to Choka to kill King Chu. It also becomes very clear now that Tenka doesn't really have much time left because he's been wounded for a long time, actually since the battle on Chokomei's ship in like volume 12 or 13. And even though we always see in the pictures that Tenka has bandages around his stomach, it's never talked about. And to be more specific, Tenka's wound is actually cursed. And while he says it's just a scratch, it also never heals, which is... yeah, we kind of try to ignore that, but Tenka also hides this fact from the others. He hides the fact that he isn't doing too well anymore. In front of Choka's gates, Tenka is stopped by Taikobo, who had assumed that Tenka would come to kill King Chu, and they start to fight because Tenka refuses to turn around. And Taikobo insists on letting humans settle all of this. The thing is, Tenka has lost his direction in life after his father passed away because his goal was always to become stronger and a better fighter than his father, so he doesn't know what to do with his life now. And also Tenka knows that he's going to die because of his wounds, and he wants to avenge his father before that happens. But before Taikobo and Tenka can fight any longer, Otenkun eventually intervenes and takes Tenka and brings him to the Forbidden Palace to the king. And Tenka and the king fight, and Tenka wins the fight. He wounds the king heavily, but doesn't kill him because he leaves that for King Bu. But, well, he's still heavily wounded, and we also have a palace guard who sees what happens and stabs Tenka in the back, and Tenka is sealed. He dies. I don't want to say that I cried my eyes out for the whole first half of volume 20, but I also don't want to lie to you. That really ripped my heart out. I think that was the saddest thing that happened in the whole series. The next day, King Bu does behead King Chu and is installed as the new king of the Zhou dynasty. We now turn our attention back to the Sennin world. Something strange has happened in that Taijo-kun, the guy in the lazy suit, wakes up. Since his sleep was linked with yokas, that must mean that Yoka is also awake. The Unshu sisters, the sisters of Chokomei, they have found the black box of Kingo Island, and they found out that there is a third place like the Kongrong Mountains and Kingo Island, Horai Island, and that is the hideout where Yoka is. The Sendo want to go there, of course, and they even have a vehicle because Taitsu, Mr. Pao-Pei engineer, he has started to build a second Kongrong Mountains, which they use as their vehicle. Taikobo now also learns about the whole Yoka thing and about how he's been duped by Genshi Tenson the whole time. And he does feel a little betrayed. I mean, who wouldn't? But also he understands why Genshi Tenson did it. Taikobo also now starts to wonder who or what Otenkun is, because he kind of acts on his own terms, and it doesn't really seem understandable all the time what he does, but we will come back to that in a bit. So Daki and Yoka on Horai Island, they know that the other Sendo will come, so Yoka gives powers equal to Daki's to some of the other yokai sennin at Horai Island. So obviously Daki is really just a means to an end for Yoka. Eventually Taikobo and the other Sendo find Horai Island, but they first cannot enter it because of its shield. They cannot destroy it. But however, Shinkoyo, he also wants to fight Yoka, and with his Raikoban, the super Pao-Pei that looks like an ice cream cone, he can destroy the shield, and so everybody can enter Horai Island, which, surprise, is another planet. So they enter into a kind of warp zone that then warps them to the other place, to Horai Island. And on a side note, now Yozen leaves the group for a bit because he wants to find Bunchu's super Pao-Pei and also the super Pao-Pei of Yozen's father at the place where they died, so at the place where Kongrong Mountains and Kingo Island crashed. He finds the Pao-Pei and starts to wear his father's super Pao-Pei, so that pretty much just goes to show how strong Yozen actually is, because he can just go and use a super Pao-Pei, no questions asked. Yeah, so he's a pretty strong guy. The others enter the planet, and now it's time for another tournament. Daki wants Taikobo to make up a team of 7 members to fight 7 of her sennin, the 7 yokai sennin who got further powers from Yoka. So Taikobo, they make up a team of 7 people, and they get unexpected help from Nento. He was formerly the head of the 12 elite sennin at Kongrong, but he has been missing for quite some time, which was a dupe to deceive Yoka. He is also the little brother of Ryukitsu Koshu, the pureblood sennin. And Nento is ridiculously strong, and he has an extreme sense for justice. At one point during the tournament, Yozen comes back with the super Pao-Pei, but there is also something strange about the tournament, because they fight in an arena, but that kind of makes the buffed Yoka sennin weaker. So do we maybe have an agenda from Daki to make the yokai sennin lose against the Kongrong Mountain people? But the other thing that happens is that during one of the fights, Taikobo kind of dies and his soul flies off to be sealed. But wait, Otenkun intercepts Taikobo's soul. What? And now the nesting really kicks off. It turns out that Taikobo and Otenkun are kind of the same person. They were both Ueki originally. Ueki was the disciple of Genshi Tenson, who was sent to Kingo Islands and then became Otenkun. So Ueki's soul could be split into parts, and when Genshi Tenson found out about that, he split Ueki up. One part went to Kingo Island in exchange for Yosen and then became Otenkun there, and the other part was put into a child of the Jiang tribe who had recently been killed in a battle. And so Genshi Tenson actually resurrected the child, and that child would later become a doshi at Kongrong, Taikobo. Why did Genshi Tenson do that? Our friend Shinkoyo has a theory about that. He thinks that Genshi Tenson wanted to ensure that both Yosen and Ueki would be on his side for the fight against Yoka, and to ensure that at least a part of Ueki would be on his side, he split his soul and kind of kept one half by putting it into the child Taikobo. So now Otenkun proposes Taikobo a deal to merge, because he wants to be complete again. Taikobo is now kind of between a rock and a hard place because he hates Otenkun. He is responsible for a lot of deaths and he is evil. But on the other hand, Taikobo will die if they don't merge because Taikobo doesn't have a body anymore. So, shing, they merge. In the meantime, the others have won Ducky's tournament and they are brought to where Yoka's soul is. Funnily enough, when they meet, Yoka kind of needs a minute to understand that the group of visitors has actually come to kill her. But needless to say, they are not strong enough for Yoka. And Yoka actually captures them temporarily in a special dimension. And as I say that, I realize that catching people and putting them in other dimensions is something that happens quite a lot in this manga. Anyway, Taikobo / Otenkun / Ueki joins the others eventually, and now it turns out that he's actually one of the first humans, Fuki. So we'll just keep on calling him Taikobo, maybe Fuki, because I don't want to say all 4 names all the time. It turns out Taikobo was one of the first humans, and he was living where Taijo Rukun was sleeping in his lazy suit. So Taikobo, or Fuki, he got to Kongrong Mountains and he told Tenshi Genson as well as Nento about the whole Yoka thing, and that he waited for history to repeat itself many times over, because every time that Yoka had to destroy everything, she would get a bit weaker, so it would become more possible to defeat her. So the whole Hoshin project thing was planned long ago in advance by Fuki, who is also Taikobo, and yeah, woo! Fuki and Yoka start fighting eventually. Remember, Yoka is still only her soul. She doesn't have her body back. And they deceive and dupe each other numerous times in this battle, and it's honestly very confusing. At some point it also turns out that Daki has put Yoka's sealed body above ground. Oops! And there Taikobo first has to set up a kind of border with his super Paupe, because otherwise nobody would be able to attack Yoka's soul. Also, Yoka splits herself up into like 1,000 parts, so now nobody knows which one is the real soul and which one is just an image of her soul. So basically now a big, super chaotic, mega fight is happening with everybody, which is really cool, and also all the 7 super Paupe are involved, which is also needed in order to win. All the super Paupe have to be brought together for this, and they are, and it's spectacular. But in all of this chaos, Yoka also tries to sneak to her body, which doesn't really work because a Ducky ends up hijacking Yoka's body. We already know that Ducky has a lot of training possessing other bodies because she's been doing that for several centuries. And needless to say, we are all confused now, but we get an explanation from Ducky. So, we know she's ambitious, and ever since she made the deal with Yoka, she also had her own goals. And her goal is to become the ruler of the planet, but not in like a Hitler or classical villain kind of way, but actually more in a Gaia kind of way. So she wants to be part of everything in the world, so she can influence everything. She wants basically to merge with the world. And after getting Yoka's body, she can dissolve and become part of the planet itself. And she needed Yoka's body for that, because that was not possible with a borrowed human body. So we kind of lose our villain here. I mean, she has done cruel and awful things, no question, but the twist is that her actual goal is in a way not cruel, not what we would have expected in the course of the series. And the awful things she's done, it turns out, at least many of the awful things, were part of her deal with Yoka, where she manipulated history. But oh well, Yoka kind of does get her body back anyway, and now the real fight begins. Taikobo also now understands how his anti-Power-Pei actually works. He can actually absorb other Senin's strength and make his own attacks stronger. And the Senin who are around, they all agree to let him absorb their powers, so he gets stronger and he's able to fight Yoka. But using everybody's strength is still not enough, so Genshi Tenson eventually releases the souls from the Hoshin die. Because the souls of those who died, they are sealed in the Hoshin die, which means they haven't completely left. They are captured in the Hoshin die. And the purpose of that whole thing was to save up their energy so it could be used in the fight against Yoka. And pretty much everybody lets Taikobo use their energy, even former enemies like Chokomei and Bunshu, because they all see that Yoka is the real big villain who they all have to fight together. So eventually Taikobo manages to kill Yoka, but Yoka also takes him with her. Or does she? Because what the characters don't know, but what we know, is that Ducky, since she has now become part of the planet and part of the air, is actually able to save Taikobo. Ta-da! So now we come to the end. King Bu is the new ruler in Choka, and the Senin have established their new Senin world on this third place, this kind of artificial planet. And the new boss there at Horai Island is Yozen. And the reason for that is that Yozen is accepted by both human Senin and by yokai Senin, because he's a yokai Senin himself. And between the Senin world and the human world, in this kind of warp zone, Genshi Tenson has also established the Shinkai, where those who have died go. Suppu and Bukichi, they also visit the human world again to see how things are going, and they even find out that apparently Taikobo hasn't died, but he actually secretly chills around. And Shinkoyo is the only one who is able to find Taikobo, but he ends up not fighting him, which is something that Shinkoyo wanted to do from the very beginning, to test if Taikobo is a worthy rival for him, but they end up not deciding that in a way. So for Taikobo, it all ends with being human and living a human life, away from the Sennin world, which I feel is very bittersweet in a way. So yeah, that is how Hoshin Engi ends. I'm not even sure how to close this video. I hope that you liked my very long and relatively detailed summary of the plot during the last 5 videos. I hope that I could give you some further insight into the story, or some insight at all if you haven't read it. And I hope that I could show some of the crazy and spectacular things that are happening in this series. I myself had a lot of fun doing these videos. I hope that it was also fun for you to watch them and that it was interesting for you to watch them. If you know the series, please let me know what you think of it. In another video I might include more of an actual review of my opinions of that series, but I think it's pretty clear that I love it, although it ripped my heart out because it killed off my favorite character. But yeah, I hope that you liked this, that you enjoyed this video, and maybe I'll see you in the next one. Bye.